I want you to stop. I mean, stop right now. If you're waiting for inspiration, stop. It ain't coming. Now, everything I tell you here on this channel is my personal opinion of how things work with me. So I'm not going to say it doesn't come to someone somewhere, but if you haven't written your book yet or gotten a good start on it, obviously it hasn't come to you. Inspiration doesn't just come to you. It's something you've got to grab. And today we're going to start. I'm going to start on my book. I want you to start on your book. And we're going to talk how to do it exactly today and get past this inspiration thing. Two terms I want you to think about that I think are very important for writers. I think they're very important for people, period. Expectation versus hope. We all like to have hope. If things are going wrong, you hope that your great aunt recovers from an illness, and you hope that if she doesn't, she leaves you money in the will. Does that sound horrible? Well, I'm going to say it. You hope that you get a promotion at work if you're still working. You hope that the sun comes out tomorrow and it's not cloudy and doesn't rain all day. Those are hopes. Those are things beyond your control. That's what hope is. You have hope that these things are going to happen. Expectations are different. Expectations, I believe, are something you put into motion. I expect my aunt to get better, and I expect her to leave me something in the will if she doesn't. I expect the sun to come out tomorrow. Even though I don't have any control of it, I have hope for it, but I expect to get this done. I expect to mow my yard tomorrow. No one's going to take control of that. You can't say, I hope to write this book. The people who always tell me, I hope to write, someday I will, I hope to write. No, they're not going to do it. I expect to write this book, and I expect that we're going to start today. So let's talk about how we actually do that. Where do we get out of the starting gate? There's some important things to do first, and I will speak from experience as I mentioned before. When I decided to write my first book, I sat down in all seriousness 5 times. I said maybe it was 6, man, maybe it was more. When you don't get it done that many times, you quit counting. I sat down at a table, pen, paper, something to drink, and there I was ready to go, and I waited for this inspiration that was going to come to me. It didn't come. So I just, it'll come later. So I'd wait during the day and the night. And I have these ideas, and I'd sit down and nothing happened, couldn't get it on paper. They said an inspiration would come to me, and they lied. It never came like that. I had to sit down and call it. Sit right down and call it. How I call it as I started to write. Now, I'm going to show you here. This is the first book I wrote right here. And it's called False Confessions. That's not me on the cover. My hair hasn't been that long for a long time. That was the gentleman. The book was written about him and his battle against the polygraph. That's Doug Williams. Doug is now deceased, but he was the topic of that first book. He asked me to write this book about him and his struggle in the world of lie detectors. And we'll talk about that more later on in a different program. Today is about how did I get to write that first book if I had no inspiration. Well, sometimes you have to set yourself up for failure, a term I don't really like. But I had originally had an idea for a different book I was going to write. And those times I sat down, that different book I had never came to me. Later, it did after I forced it. But I wrote this book because Doug came to me a number of times and asked me to do it. And then when I agreed to, I wanted to be a person of my word, not let him down, so I had to do it. So I sat down and I started to write. And the words eventually started to come. And I'm going to tell you the steps I took to get to that point where there was just paper in front of me, just a piece of paper, and finished up with this. So, what were those steps? First thing, find a place to write. This is huge. Because when you sit down and start writing, and I know this may sound like, of course I got to find a place to write. No, I mean find a place to write. Because when you sit down and start writing, and you do get the flow going, and you will get the flow going. The last thing you want is an interruption. Get rid of the phone. Don't look out the window. Turn off the TV. Get a nice quiet place. I think Stephen King wrote in an old laundry room for a long time, that kind of stuff. Maybe you could write, maybe you have a little office you can write in, maybe not. Maybe you have to go somewhere else. One of my favorite places to write, has been for a long time, is the library, public library. couple of different rooms or corners in the back there. No one bothers me. Libraries are people who read and people who write. And there's some homeless people in there now, unfortunately. This day and age, they have to get in to get warm. I have no problem getting there and getting warm. They never bother me. And then you find a place. So wherever your place is, find it. And then you sit down and you call in the inspiration. So let's talk about that. I would suggest to you to do something. This is what I did. So I'm going to suggest this. If you have not started your book, write what I call a seed scene. And the seed scene is going to be like a chapter. It can be 3-4 paragraphs. It can be 50 pages if you want it to be, about what your book is about. And in this seed scene, I want you to put your characters in, and how you introduce these characters is by dialogue. So let's talk about the seed scene. Let's talk about Doug's book in the seed scene. So I had to introduce Doug to the world, and he actually was fairly well known, but I introduced him, so I built his character up in my seed scene, the way he talked, the way he walked, the length of his hair, what he'd done in the past, things like that. Just jot down little things like that. Now your seed scene, if it's about you, or a family member, or a friend or maybe a fictitious character, let's talk about those different things. If it's about you, write about you. Just things that you think about you. Don't worry about what other people think about you, because that's going to boggle up your scene. So you need to get it on paper. So start, I am what? I'm, 65 or 66 years old. I worked at John Deere, if that's what you did. I drive whatever it is. I'm liberal, I'm a conservative. I go to the Methodist Church. I'm an atheist. My hair's kind of been falling out. If you're ladies out there, I still have my wedding ring. After all these years, my husband's deceased. Things like that. You know what those things are, right? But about you. If you're bringing other people in to your story, which I would assume you would, if you just write a book just about you and don't talk to anyone, might be a little rough for people to take. But bring other people in and you introduce them by some light description, and then use dialogue. Just little sentences here. Hi Bob, how you doing? Good, Bill. How are you? Janet, how have you been feeling lately? Well, good, Tim. Things like that. Just anyway to get that going. Forget about capturing people's imagination. Forget about people reading it. Forget about all those things. We're talking today about you starting to write. Just write those down. Little quotation marks on it. Bob said, it's really hotter than hell outside today. Something like that. Get it going. Dialogue will help you introduce characters and get you to do what we're trying to do now. If that's right. I use dialogue in that book. Doug told me about some conversations he had with people. I had to paraphrase, but I put them in there and I took those conversations and built an entire scene out of it. We'll talk about how you do that later. Right now, you just want to get that down. Describe 2 characters. They can be anywhere. Put them in the library, put them at a bar, put them in a church, meeting on the street, down at the grocery store, swimming pool. I don't care. Nudist column if you want to. It doesn't make any difference. You put them in there and then you get this conversation going. And it doesn't have to be a real in-depth conversation, but think about things. And write it the way people talk. This is something I'll hammer on a lot. Don't say, hello, Robert, how are you feeling today? Who the hell talks like that? Say, hey, Bob, how you doing? You feeling better? You were sick for a while? Are you been down lately? I heard you had this. Did you have, whatever it is. Just write it out. Like you're having a conversation, write it down. And I'm going to tell you, the key to that part now is to just let the words go. And the next thing I'm going to tell you to not do, this is a not do. Don't edit. Don't do anything to fix it up. Get it on paper. It's like when I talked about writing the letter to a relative or a dead person. Get it on paper. Don't go back and say, oh, that looks dumb. Oh my God, I left a comma out there, or maybe I should add a word here. Don't do any of that. Don't. Just keep going, get it on paper, and then take a good look at it afterwards. Actually lay it down for a little while. That's I do. I lay it down, just walk away from it for a while. And later you can take a look at it. That's your start. That's your seed scene. Your seed scene can be anything you want it to be, as long as you get it down and you're talking about, writing about what you want to have in your book. So once you get that going, get to writing. The last thing I want you to do in that is to commit to a time period. Now, why is that important? Well, you don't want to set your first time and write for 2, 3, 4 hours, I don't think. Now, if you can do that, more power to you. But just say 15 minutes or maybe half an hour. Set a timer, whatever, check your watch or something that periodically. Write for a certain amount of time to get used to doing it. That's what writers do. I mean, I spent a long time reading about other writers and the different things they did to get going. And from that, I took what I needed to do to get going. And then I adapted it. Because the reality to this, everything I'm telling you, you can take none of it, you can take some of it, and you can take all of it. The likelihood you're going to take all of it is pretty slim because you have to adapt it to your way. What I'm telling you, they are the guidelines. Find a place, get yourself comfortable. If you need a pop, you need a beer, you need coffee, you need tea, whatever, but get a place that's secluded from everyone. Make the dog stay outside the door. Or my dog will show up at the video now and then, pretty much leaves me alone. Now you've got the place. Now you sit down and you write that seed scene. And that seed scene is about characters and about where they're going to be in the beginning of your story. This is just beginning. You got a whole story. And remember what I told you before, what's the worst part of anything is usually just starting. Airline pilots, I said it the last time, what's the part that they train the most on because it's the most difficult? Is the takeoff and the landing. And this is the takeoff. This is what you have to work on. You can come back and refine it later, but just get it all put down. Look back on your experiences in your life and think about what I just said about starting. You start a new job, usually I think the hardest was the first day. You got to get new people, new systems, new times to be somewhere, new ways to get there, new roads to get there. But after a while, it becomes pretty easy because you understand all those things and the navigation's simple after a while. That's why once you start, you can get all these things done. The last thing I want to talk about is, again, your expectations. You have to expect of yourself that you will do these things, that you will follow through. We talked about inspiration. The great authors and even the good authors and even the authors no one know go by the expectations they're going to set a certain time, maybe not every day, maybe every other day, and sit down and write. So when you sit down to write your seed scene, you're starting to set a track for a time you're going to write. For me, I prefer mornings. I don't know why. I think most writers seem to prefer mornings. Some do it in the evening, but you can write any time you want to if you delegate that time and you decide you're going to call the inspiration to you by starting to write. That's what it is. That's all it is. That's all I'm going to ask you to do. Write your seed scene. I'm going to write mine. We'll be talking about them soon. Compare some notes and see what happens, because I think we're going to go someplace for this now. Second half of life, we ain't got as much as the first half, but we're going to do it a whole lot better. Talk to you soon. Remember, keep your hat on so we know you.